What if there was a whole meal that you could just drink? And what if that was so popular that it shows up in cookbooks for over 500 years? And then by 1900, it has disappeared. And today we just have one solitary example. I'm sure you've heard of the word caudle. To coddle someone, to coddle a child. Usually we use it in a negative connotation. It means to treat them very, very tenderly, possibly when they don't deserve it. Well, this word is actually related to the term for this kind of drink / meal. And they were called caudles in the time period, spelled slightly differently than we spell it, but the word is actually very, very related and connected. It has to do with the term to warm up slowly. When we coddle someone, we might cuddle them in a blanket, right? Something like that. But if you're serving something that you've heated slowly, and in this sense, it's actually a drink that we kind of use as a meal, we heat it slowly, we simmer it. This is called a caudle. There was also a term for something very similar in the 18th century. They would have a posset, which is a very similar kind of drink. Now, this does show up in English cookery as early as 1320. And we have a couple of cookbooks from the 14th century called the Forme Curie, which shows up in the early 18th century, where they're studying cooking from 300 and 400 years ago. And the caudle shows up in this recipe book. Well, today we're going to be doing one of these caudles, and they are fascinating. They're a warm drink. They many times will have an alcoholic beverage and something that is a thickener. So maybe oatmeal. Many times it's got eggs. It might also have milk or cream. And what's very interesting is this is very popular in the 17th century, is very popular in the 18th century, but by the time you get to the end of the 18th century, they are very uncommon, and throughout the 19th century, they just disappear. They just don't show up at all. Many times this drink is used for an invalid, someone who needs care, someone who needs a very, very simple meal that they can drink that's easy on their stomach. And a lot of times it's used in a celebratory sense. So today, that one little example is eggnog. Even though today we drink it cold, historically, it was a warm drink. So we have lots of different recipes for caudles. They aren't all alike, and they aren't even necessarily all used the same. Sometimes these caudles are also used inside of a pie. So they will do a meat pie, and they'll just have the crust, and they'll put the meat on the inside. They'll bake it for a while so that the crust gets nice and hard and the meat cooks properly. And then they'll cut a hole in the top. They'll pour the caudle in it to thicken the pie and give it a nice juicy texture. And they'll cook it for a little bit farther, and then it'll be done. So it can be used many different ways. Some of these caudles have tea in them. Some of them have wine in them or another alcoholic beverage, maybe ale or beer. And they're almost always sweetened, so you see sugar added also. So there are a lot of different varieties, but if it's going to be a caudle, it's going to be thick, it's going to be warm, and it's going to be nourishing. Our recipe is out of The Complete Housewife. This is 1734, and it is to make a tea caudle. Make a quart of strong green tea and pour it out into a skillet and set it over the fire. Then beat the yolks of 4 eggs, mix it with a pint of white wine, a grated nutmeg, sugar to taste, put it all together, stir it over the fire until it is very hot, and then drink it in china dishes as caudle. There are other caudle recipes in this particular cookbook, but I picked this one out because it is kind of all of the standard stuff, and it uses tea, which many of them don't. We got a bohea tea that is a black tea, but we're gonna be using a gunpowder tea. And gunpowder tea is kind of fun. It's not made with gunpowder at all. It's a green tea, which is what she calls for, but all the leaves are curled up into little nodules that look like gunpowder grains of the time period. So we got tea that's made with this, and we will be making this caudle up. So I have already made the tea up here. I've got a pot of nice dark tea, and I let this steep for a long time. So I wanted to make this with a lot of tea flavor. And in this particular recipe, it's a chance for us to kind of go wild with the tea part. If we want to bring different kinds of flavors into this, this is where we go. You can pick, as she picked out here, a strong green tea. If you want to bring in some other flavors, you could use a flavored tea. They didn't have as much of that in the 18th century, but they did have blended teas. So maybe you want like an Earl Grey, that would probably make a really good one. Or some other interesting tea flavors that you like best. We take this and we're gonna start with it cold, because if this was hot and we started to introduce our egg yolks, it would make scrambled eggs in boiling water, and we don't want that. That does not sound good at all. So we are going to start off with our tea cold, and we're gonna put it into, as she says, our skillet. We got sort of a saucepan here that we're going to start heating this up. We've got our 4 egg yolks. We're gonna beat those so that they're nice and smooth. And we'll warm these all up together, and we'll continue to stir this as we warm it up over the fire. We can also add in our sugar. You don't have to go crazy with sugar. I'm just gonna put in here about 1/4 cup just to sweeten it up a touch. The wine I'm going to use is a white wine like she calls for, and it's going to be a sweetened white wine. Since this is already got some sugar in it, we might as well just use a sweet white wine to complement the other parts of this. It does use some spicing, and depending on the tea style you use here, you might want to use something different than nutmeg. But nutmeg will work perfectly in this particular one. If you want to make one that's more like, let's say an eggnog, you could use cinnamon or some other spice. But this is, again, one of those spots where you can adjust this recipe to make it like you want it. So I'm going to spice this, obviously, with plenty of nutmeg. We don't need this to cook necessarily. We just want it to all come up to temperature, maybe 150, 160 degrees. We don't want those raw egg yolks to maybe get you sick. I don't see that that's going to be a real big problem, but let's make sure that it's cooked properly, warmed up, and mixed all the way. That is all this is going to take. Once it's up to heat, it's ready to, as she says, serve it in little china dishes. Basically, you can see this in the time period as teacups. Here is our caudle, and it's ready to try out. It's nice and warm. It does have an interesting kind of, I don't know, a nutmeg pudding kind of smell to it. I'm not sure how to describe this, but let's find out what it tastes like. I mean, it looks good, right? Rich, thick, definitely has a wonderful little tea zing to it, depending on the style of tea you have here. Just a touch of sweetness. It isn't too sweet. I didn't put in too much sugar, and the wine is totally kind of counteracted. It doesn't have a strong wine flavor, but it does have something that nothing has today. Think of it like a warm and slightly thin pudding. This is really good.